Good morning, nerds. Let's talk about what I need you to do to get ready for this test that is tomorrow. And so, for you guys, just so you'll know, this was your review sheet that you guys downloaded for me. And I was hoping that on Monday you would go through and using what you knew, fill it out. Because, guys, this needs to be turned in, completed, not just partially completed, but completed all the way through for points at test time. So when you take your test for me on Wednesday, you should have been through this review sheet and filled it out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through now and kind of fill in any holes, because I think it's logical for you to try to fill out what you know and then to find out what you don't know. So if this stuff, there are areas that you didn't know, that's fine. Those are the areas you're going to hit extra hard when you're studying. And I'm going to tell you straight up, guys, if it's on here, it's on the test. The only thing that's not on the test with full throttle here is the 3 C's. I just list them. I think you should know what they are and what they do, but you don't have to know all of these little tiny details just to fill that in and clarify, okay? So let's get started just to see where you are. But that's your review sheet, and hopefully this is what you're going to turn into me at test time. Complete it. Okay. So here's the actual review, and please understand, guys, my handwriting, it just kind of oinks, and I apologize for that. So I'm just going to talk, but I wanted to give you something to look at while you're listening. So basically, number one, how was the internet invented? Well, basically, we know it was invented out of basic need from the military. They hired a company called RAND to come up with the concept of communication that was unpredictable and could withstand chaos or points that were destroyed. And the concept they developed was a concept of nodes that were connected, where packets were given a specific identity and sent on their way. But those packets did not have a predictable pattern, and therefore we get the whole idea of networking, which was successful. RAND was a think tank that did the concept. The first network that was built was called ARPANET. It was pretty much instigated by the Pentagon. It had 4 nodes. The really kind of fun fact is that those nodes, that the people communicating on them were sending a lot of gaming stuff and fun stuff. So, same old thing, same old, just like today. We also learned of something called TCP/IP. That's Transition Control Protocol, the rules of actually moving concept or content on a network. That's what TCP is. And IP is Internet Protocol. That's the actual specific address that each computer is assigned by a router, right? So when you move things between devices, that's called TCP, and the actual address is an IP, and that address is assigned by your router. In a network, they established when things began first basic network domains. They were .net for network, .com for company, .org for organization. Those 3 can be purchased to this day. .edu for education, .mil for military, and .gov for government. These cannot be purchased. And there are variations of these also, like .co is kind of popular now, or is emerging, but these are still the big 6 guys, and they're still in place. Writing a search string, tracking your sources. Remember that when we learned how to do that, pretty basic stuff. So if we're going to track a domain, meaning find out who owns it, you can use domain tracker things such as EasyWhois and find out who purchased that domain. If we want to look at a website from its original concept, we can use Wayback Machine, which allows you to see the actual stored cache of websites over time and how they looked. And so if we remember, we looked at SmokyValley.org, and we could see when our first website was published, how the websites have changed over time. So, that's just kind of cool. Root commands when you're writing a search string. Link domain allows us to see who is linked, also called backlink, to a site. So we can find out who's following us. And this is a good identifier because you can see who has made connections with a site. Site domain allows us to do what's called X-raying, or gathering results from only that one site. That's really helpful when you're looking for sources of information. File type and the extension of the file type, like file type PDF or file type XLX, so like an Excel spreadsheet. That actually will retrieve that type of file for your content. In title lets you see keywords from inside a title, or in URL helps you find keywords from inside a URL. These are often used together sometimes, but they're really helpful for tracking down specifics. Remember our Boolean commands, and, or, not, in all caps. When I'm using Chrome, instead of the word not, I use a negative sign. This is a truncate sign. Remember, it's like we use it to find what's missing, like a blank. An ellipse, ... creates a range that we can see. Parentheses tell you what to look for together. These are all restrictions and expanders in writing a search string. Keywords are the words used to create the content search. Remember that these are important things we know and things we want to find. How does Google bring your information? Well, basically it brings you information based on popularity, meaning how large the site, how many backlinks does it have, how hard is it regarded as far as the dependability of its information. So popularity tends to be a very big factor, as does pay-per-click, what information is being advertised. It's a combination thereof, and sometimes your location is also involved. Your past search history can also affect this. But by and large, it's based on popularity and pay-per-click. How does it rank the items it brings you? Popular results. Natural language is it'll try to read what it thinks you want to bring you stuff. Your location plays a part. Your past search history also plays a part, just like I mentioned above. So let's talk about research basics, direct versus indirect, primary and secondary, and how do you limit a research. A primary source is direct information from the source, like an eyewitness account. So if I'm going to talk about, I'm going to write a paper about Auschwitz and how it was a concentration camp. I would want to find direct history references from people who were there to find primary sources, right? Secondary sources are sources about content, and they're factual. You find factual ones, but they're secondary, meaning they don't totally revolve around primary source. So a primary source would be an interview with a survivor of Auschwitz. A secondary source would be a book about information about what it was and what happened there, and maybe it'd have pictures of the site and the whole thing. But can you see the difference there? Primary is a direct connection. And primary doesn't just have to be like an interview. It can be a direct piece of evidence from the source. So if I'm writing about the Berlin Wall and I got a chunk of it, that's a primary source, and which I do, which is pretty cool. So yeah, you can actually see it that way. We want you to understand that you want to use a database to find your content sources. That in a database, your stuff is all verified, checked, rechecked. You're not going to be getting, some kind of fake websites through a database. That's why it's always your first go-to place to find good research, whether that be as a primary source or a secondary source. You don't have to do that verification part if you're using a database. And our databases are located on our library webpage through Smoky Valley High School. All right, just like we practiced. Okay, understanding DRM, digital rights management, right? When things are copyrighted and how I can use it. So DRM is digital rights management, things that are been labeled and as the materials of the creator, right? P2P, peer-to-peer, is when you create a digital bond between sources so that you can get stuff that you're not supposed to have for free. But to make that bond, you have to use what's called a torrent. And that's a piece of software that allows us to make a peer-to-peer bond. Getting DRM materials on a P2P through a torrent is illegal. And a lot of times you get nasty things along with it, straight up. Your web identity, that's what we know about you online, how to protect it, how to promote it. So anytime we have social media stuff, social networking basics, what do we post, what do we don't? Well, first of all, when you set up your stuff, you don't allow people to tag your pictures, your content without your permission. They just can't do that. You want to make sure that on your settings that you don't necessarily allow lots of extensions to have access to your content because, again, they can get your stuff. So that, I mean, that's just about protecting your other information. You never put your full birthday, where you live, your phone number, even your email. You don't make those kind of information, contact information public. That should be private. And careful on who we allow to see our stuff. If you don't know them, you don't have to be polite, people. Remember those things. What you post, remember if it's not your grandmother's approval, no, don't do it. Even if you're angry or you're trying to be snarky and funny, just refrain. Remember that what you post is going to be there forever. And people can come and see it, find it, access it, and make a judgment about you, even a judgment that's unfair. So careful. Netiquette. That's the combination of two words, network and etiquette. It's behavior while you're online. Remember those basics. Keep people in mind. Treat people with respect. Don't waste their time. Don't use their bandwidth. Basic things about how to speak to people with respect. It's a pretty basic thing, and I think you guys are pretty good at it. All right? How do I tell fake news? Remember, there's Mrs. Dink's 3 C's. Check your content. Look at the article and the title. Determine if what you're seeing looks legit. Are there lots of pop-up ads in the whole thing that you're looking at? When was the article produced? If you do a picture search on the article, is the picture connected to the article or is the picture from something else? I mean, that's checking content. That's the first C. Second C, confirm the source validity. Who wrote it and are they accountable? Do they have some kind of reputation journalistically because they've been trained? They're professional writers. This is what they do for a living. This is really important. That's different than somebody who's just a blogger or somebody who's sharing personal insights. Make sure there's as little bias here as possible. Although all media has bias of some kind, make sure that the person that's doing it, if they report something that's untrue, that they're held accountable for that. That's a big key, right? Where's my third one? Guys, I must have caught that off. So there should be another third point. Let me see if I dropped it down here. Check content, confirm, and the third one is to, what was it? Oh, guys, I even forgot. Check, confirm, validate. For the last one, you need to triangulate your sources. So you go check other sources, basically. Go compare. You go I'll look at really good stuff. So I'll look at like PBS, I'll look at ABC, NBC, CNN, Fox, and I'll just triangulate my comparison. If you're getting a story from one source only, that's a warning. Warning. Remember that you can also check with fake news stuff. You can also check with, let me go, just pull here, guys. You can check with like Washington Post Fact Checker. You can check with Snopes.com. Let me just see if I've got all 3 of those on there for you. Sure. There it is. Compare your findings. There's my third. Reputable sources. Make sure that you check on things like this. Like, make sure you know that it's not supposed to be partisan. I mean, those are all important things. I must have just chopped this off, guys, and I apologize for that. Okay. Last things, terms. I'm just going to be chewing through these. So your cyber identity is the same as your digital footprint, who you are online. What if I didn't know you? What would I think about you based on what I find online? That's your cyber identity. You want to make sure it's as positive as possible, we will help create that because that's how people are going to find you to hire you someday. Cyberbullying, that's using digital devices to harm others. Nada, we don't do that. Sexting, remember that, sending sexual pictures, content digitally? Remember that'll get you in a lot of trouble legally, especially if you are underage. Flaming or angry, threatening communication digitally of any kind, texting or otherwise. Trolling is when you seek to bully, threaten, or harm others for attention. You stir the drama pot. You hurt people on purpose. That's what trolling is. Phishing, I threw this in here. That's when you go looking to create content to get attention. You create something fake just to see if you can make it go viral. Or you go looking for these people to get even more attention, right? Internet disengagement. That video we watched. That's when you kind of get lost behind your computer and you forget that the people on the other side are actually human. Don't forget that. I don't care if you're in your bedroom by yourself, you're not alone. When you're online, you're online. It just feels like you're alone. So we have to remind ourselves of the human connection. Searching the web, using an algorithm, right? The reason that we use Boolean terms, and, or, not, or a negative sign through Chrome is to help us write what's called a search string. Sorry, my writing is horrible. That will allow you to narrow your content by breaking the algorithm. Remember, when you break that algorithm often, you often get what's called a CAPTCHA, kind of a little check mark to make sure you're not a bot, right? You've had that. That's an awesome thing. A database, that's a valid source of information. Ours are found on the high school library webpage. Primary source is a direct source from the actual event or the actual person that involves the story. A secondary source is going to be about this content, but it's not going to be just a primary source. It's going to have information and be an overview. Torrent. That's that piece of software that allows you to make a P2P, peer-to-peer connection. And if you're getting copyrighted material, DRM materials, via a torrent through a P2P, that's illegal. A proxy allows you to temporarily disguise your IP and therefore go to another site. In our case, a lot of times people will try to use it to get around the filter, the firewall. DRM, we've covered. Copyrighted materials. Plagiarism, using others' work without giving attribution. Remember attribution, credit where credit's due? This will get you in a lot of trouble too. Public domain, any work that we can use that has been over time released from copyright or has been given that label by its creator. And is okay as long as we use it and give credit where credit's due. Fair use is giving credit where credit's due. I can use it for education or nonprofit. Homegrown is anything I make. So, to be honest, homegrown is always the best bet, but it takes time. And sometimes that's our issue. We will make things with homegrown content. Creative Commons, anytime you, as a creator, allow people to use your content, but as long as they give you attribution, because maybe you're trying to use... you're trying to get famous or noticed or notoriety. Creative Commons are often content that is meant to promote the artist or the creator and therefore can be used, but only if you give it attribution. So guys, that's kind of a quick rundown. And I guess what I need you to do is to go through and fill out your content here. What will the test be? It's going to be 113 questions. Multiple choice, sometimes multiple mark. You will have plenty of time to take it. It'll be online. I'll talk to you about how I do that before the test. I would encourage you to go through here. If there's stuff that you did not remember at all, that's the stuff you study. If you remember all of this well, just go through it a little bit. I think, with all honesty, I'm not going to throw anything at you that I don't have here. So this is pretty much all the stuff that we've covered. This unit with web literacy stuff, okay? If you guys have any questions, shoot me an email. Hopefully I will be able to respond, but I may be on a plane. If I'm not on a plane, I will get to you, okay? Best of luck studying. Test is Wednesday. See you then.